So we should be on YouTube already. So hello everybody who is watching us from the live streaming or after that. This is going to be the first meeting of the year for the Build working group. Yeah, so first of all, do we have any announcements to make? Okay, so we don't have any specific announcements. So let's jump to the first topic in the agenda, which is going to be discussion around the state of the R2 migration, which is the issue 3508.
So I think there's a pull request, isn't there, open on Node core, which I saw Michael reviewed from James's son to upload to R2 as part of the release. No, sorry, as part of the build. It's a make file change and a VC build back change. So that would get the assets into a staging area, and then I presume there's some other work that needs to be done to do the actual promotion.
Yeah, so this pull request will add the assets to this staging bucket on R2. And there's also a change to the release.sh script, which is run by releasers. And apparently it's supposed to copy from the staging to the production bucket. So I'm not sure if everything is covered by this PR, but should get us close.
There's also the issue with the index files. They just saw in Slack. Do we know what that's coming from? The release is missing an index file.
I just saw that. Yeah, I saw that there is something, a discussion regarding NPM. Okay, yeah, Matt just replied to that. Yeah, let me pass the link on the chat so we can be
Oh,
all
sorry,
in the same.
the main index that.
Yeah, did this happen at the end of last year? I can't remember. I have a vague recollection this came up before. Like I can't remember what the problem was.
Are we talking about the index file on the synchronization with R2?
Yes, I would assume that's the issue.
No, it can't. What served the index file? Is that going through R2 or is that still being served from the DigitalOcean droplet? Because it's in the root of dist, so I presume it's coming from the DigitalOcean droplet because we didn't.
Yes.
Oh, no, or did we redirect down? Which one did we read?
So now everything is still served by DigitalOcean. We disabled the Cloudflare service.
Right, but we do need to check whether the cache is up to date. So we need to check if the file on the server has been updated. And if the file on the server has been updated, we need to check that Cloudflare is actually serving the current contents and not the cache.
It hasn't been updated. I'm on direct.node.js.org and there isn't the 20.11 on it.
Okay, so that's interesting. So we need to check then if the indexer has been run and if the indexer. Oh, I wonder if I'm trying to remember if we actually updated the index there and maybe that's broken.
So the release is here, I see it, 20.11.0, but the index is not updated.
Yeah. Okay.
What is supposed to update it?
So there's a cron job that runs Node.js indexer. Give me a second. There is a cron job running on the DigitalOcean droplet, which runs every so often that looks for releases to reindex. Node.js dist indexer. So it's this project, but this has been installed on the DigitalOcean droplet, and there should be either a cron drop or there is something that should be running this on a regular basis, looking at, well, something looking for changes that should then run this to rebuild the index. It may either be part of the promotion, or I think it's on a cron timer because it's there to pick up like the nightlies as well. But yeah, I can have a look after the meeting, see where it ran, and then if it did ran, whether there's actually a problem running it. So, you know, if it runs but errors or throws an exception or anything, then it won't regenerate the index. So yeah, I'll take a look after the meeting, see if I can figure out what's going on. Good news is it's fairly self-contained, so it shouldn't require like a whole bunch of processes to be rerun. It can be rerun in isolation. But yeah, it's
Okay.
Yeah, weird. Yeah, I can't remember if that's been updated recently, or I think we also updated the version of Node on the machine, so either of those could have caused issues. Well, could be something else completely. But I'll take a look after this meeting.
Okay. Yeah, let me know if you need support, Richard. I will be available if we need to republish
Okay.
it or something. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we should jump to the next topic in the agenda then. Okay, jumping to the next topic, 3390, which is near-form benchmarking servers. Let me also pass the link on the chat. I think we are still waiting for feedback from them. Do you know, Michael? If they have say something?
Sorry, which one is that again?
3390 regarding the near-form benchmarking servers.
Right, yeah, I don't think we've heard anything back from them on that. Let's take a quick look, but yeah, the last I remember.
Yeah, I think, yeah, the last comment is that one, yeah.
Right, yeah, that's like from November. I did ask, do we still need to move it forward or not?
Okay, I think we should keep the topic in the agenda just to get some visibility on it in case that something happens, so we are on the loop. Okay,
sense.
so that's good. So I think next topic on the agenda is 3240, which is the infrastructure for macOS 12. I didn't progress a lot on that, but as I finished with the release 10.11 just today, so I plan to work on this heavily in the next weeks. So probably I will have a look also for the deprecation of the 11 machines. So I think maybe it's that next year. I think we deprecated already the 10.15s. So yeah, it's going to be, I will see like what else, if we need more space or not, and how to accommodate the machines. But yeah, I think in my last comment on this, I think we have a clear puzzle on how to allocate the machines, and we still have some room for other things. So if we have the feeling that we are missing some machines on CI, or because sometimes they get problematic with the low space and stuff like that, so maybe we can adjust more machines. So that way we can avoid bottlenecks in the future on the empty spaces. But yeah, so yeah, I will work on it. But if anyone want to help me with that, also just ping me and we can split a little bit the workload on that.
I'm just
remind me-
wondering if we should not skip directly to macOS 13, since right now, so the current version is macOS 14 even.
Yep. Yeah, I think it is. There is going to be, I'm not sure which version. Maybe the 15, which is not yet published. It's not going to be supported Intel anymore. So that will be limit. But yeah, definitely we can skip 12 and jump to 13. That's okay. I mean, the amount of work that we have done on the 12, it's not that significant. So we can just jump to the 13 and use the same slot. So if we are happy with this idea, we can progress on the 13. I will check how the ISOs images are working on Orca, which is the biggest challenge for us, I think, the bigger blocker for us here. But yeah, we can, if we are happy with that, we can progress.
It makes sense to me to use, like, if 12 is going to be deprecated at some point, might as well just go to the newer one. The other question I had is, if we seem to have regular space issues, and I seem to remember something about it being like it fills up something. I assume just creating bigger disks isn't going to fix that?
Not really, because the only solution is to reboot the machine currently.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the space is back to normal.
Okay. I was just asking because, like, this would have been a good time if we're creating new ones to just make the disks bigger, but that's what I was afraid of. Not going to make any difference.
Yeah, it's just going to delay the issue. Yeah, several times per, like per month or something, I just connect to the machines when I get these alerts all the time pinging me. So, and I reboot them and clean up manually the spaces in some of them when they become problematic. But yeah, I think
we should create like a Jenkins job that runs on those ones, and like a Jenkins. Would the Jenkins job be able to reboot the machine? Probably not either, I guess. That's
it will require a sudo access, I think, for rebooting.
Because I'm just wondering, like, I know we have some other cleanup jobs that run periodically, right? If it was possible to run a job and then have it basically say, yeah, I'm within the last 20%, reboot the machine. That would at least mean that, nobody would have to go in and look at them manually.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if we cannot do it with Jenkins, maybe we can do it with an Ansible script. I think there is something for rebooting, but not. We didn't Ansible the script for the cleanup of the macOS that Joey and I were working on for a while. So maybe we can just Ansible that one and also add the rebooting. So we have a playbook, which is going to be easier. Because right now it's like entering the machine, see if the script is there, not unload it, and then just run it. But if we have it an Ansible, we can just run it cyclical. Even if it's a manual work, it's going to be less tedious.
If you can get an Ansible playbook working, there's the other thing on the agenda about build helpers using the AWX instance we have. That could be widened to that in theory. I mean, it will require one to try and figure out how to do that, because actually most of the stuff that's there at the moment. But yeah, once we've got an Ansible playbook working, we could potentially wire that up into AWX and then potentially give people outside of build that we trust access to that if anyone's interested in helping run that periodically as an option. The other really classic option, which I think would be a lot more work, would be to almost flip the way we do the agents and see if it's possible to have like ephemeral macOS agents where we're using like the Orca API to start up a macOS instance, for each build. But I think that would be a big re-engineering of how we do tests, which I'm not recommending we do, but in terms of then when we wouldn't then have long-lived agents, we would have things that just start and stop on demand. I guess
the nice thing about
it's harder to debug.
The nice thing about some integration with Jenkins is it makes sure it doesn't affect any existing jobs, right? Because So
I mean, even if you do need permissions to reboot the machine, we could potentially work out. I'm pretty certain there must be a way to give either add the user into a group that could run a specific script that could reboot the machine, but it's
actually I wonder about something where like if we had a cron job that looked for a file in a particular directory, and that cron job was running at root, and it could basically say, oh, I see this file created, I'm going to reboot. Then we could have a Jenkins job that would run periodically, look for the space issue, and write that file. That might actually Just because like that makes
Yeah.
sure that like when it reboots, no other job is running because you're the one running. Jenkins job itself could just actually sit there, like it could write the file and then wait. You know, if we ran the cron job every 5 minutes or something. I don't know. Anyway, that's thinking of ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, even if the cron job would cause jobs to terminate, the actual issue today causes the same thing, so it won't make anything worse.
That's a good
That's
point. Yeah. Okay, I think that's kind of a good summary of the status with the macOS next version. So yeah, I take the point to go ahead with try with 13 and see if we can just speed up the process there. Okay. Next thing in the agenda officially, I think, is discussion about the build helper role. We have also an additional topic in the agenda, which is discussion about the access to Cloudflare for the Node.js web infra. Do we want to change the order of the topic? Because last time we discussed a lot about the build helper, so just I'm afraid not getting time for the access discussion.
Yeah, I don't think there's much else to say about the build helper role other than that maybe the macOS rebooting could be something added to it, but other than that, nothing really has changed.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I think it's a good candidate if we try to do that for the macOS, and we can give some people specific permissions and use it MVP. Also a good way for the collaborators to get familiar with the tool and see if we come up with more ideas. So okay. So yeah, then last topic in the agenda officially, which is issue 833 on the web infra I think is in the web infra repository. So yeah, basically, no, it's in the admin, sorry, repository. It's basically discussion about the Cloudflare access for the Node.js web infra team.
So my recollection when we discussed this before is we still prefer to go down the route of what do you call it, where we had the Cloudflare configs in the build repo.
Yeah, using
so that
Terraform,
we
right?
basically PRing things into build rather than directly on the Cloudflare admin console.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm guessing that's still the way I would like to proceed.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the biggest blockers that we have on that, and maybe we have forum enough to make a decision today, is for the Terraform part, is if we are happy to use secrets, like production secrets, like Cloudflare tokens for infrastructure with right permissions and so on, and things like that on the GitHub action. That has been a while a blocker for some initiatives, like the automation for the email list. So you can just, when you merge a pull request inside of main, automatically will do the propagation, so you don't have to do it manually. That was one pull request on that way, and also to include the Jenkins alerts for the release machines that currently are not tracked there, so we don't get alerts on the repo with the issues and so on. And also the one for the Terraform. So I think the critical discussion there is like, are we happy with the idea of using GitHub Actions with sensitive tokens? Are we feel confident enough for that? Or we should do like a POC and explore it a little bit and see risk scenarios and stuff like that?
I think this is super sensitive, much more than the CI infrastructure.
Yeah.
And in the CI infrastructure, we deploy changes manually, so
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tricky. Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges there is like, if we are doing something wrong, I think in terms of pull requests, doing from people who have some kind of right access already on the organization, then I mean, I don't think it's going to be a risk, from full outsiders, because if you try to create a pull request with some changes on the pipelines, and it's the first time you contribute to the project, it's going to ask you something like, are you sure you want to run these pipelines? So it's going to ask to one of the maintainers, and you have to manually approve it, and then it's going to run. So from that thing, I think we are kind of safe. But the challenge is if one of the collaborators or people with, writing access to the repos or things like that mess up with the pipelines, then it's a little bit tricky. Also because the rotations of the secrets are going to be a little bit tricky for us to do it fast also.
Well, the only people that would have write access to the build repo are build and the technical steering committee.
Okay.
Both of those are hopefully trusted. Well, assuming that there isn't a huge GitHub snafu, which I think if that happens, we're in a bigger pile of them.
It's still possible to block access to non-owners, even if someone has read-write full access to the repository. We can block secrets from them. And well, I know there are ways. I'm not an expert on that, so yeah, we would need someone who really knows how to configure GitHub Actions and the deployment feature that they have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can explore about it. We can try to bring someone to help us. If you want, I can try to see in the network that we have to see if we have any expert on the area that can help us a little bit with this.
So the main concern would be somebody getting at the tokens, or basically like once something lands, the fact that it automatically gets deployed.
I think the challenge mostly is going to be like exposing of the tokens, because I think nobody is going to like just merge a pull request without reviewing it. And even we can just force it a little bit more. So
we don't have to deploy when the pull request is merged. We can use a different workflow.
We can use release or deployments with human approvals kind of thing. So you have like this kind of progress in deployment. So you have one of these 5 people in this call should approve it, or one member of a specific team should approve it. So there are mechanisms to prevent making bad changes. So that's one thing for sure. The other one, I think the most critical thing for us is what happens if we leak accidentally the tokens just by doing an echo and printing the token on the logs, or which is complicated on GitHub Actions, but still, or accidentally we try a different version of whatever, and then the token sends to a bad server, these kind of things, which can be.
This would be a brand new token just for Cloudflare, or are there other tokens involved?
Depends.
You've got the usual token in GitHub Actions, which you'd need to pull down the build repository, but I mean that can be read only, and has a known. I mean, I think GitHub sort of randomizes it on each. Anyway. But then, so we will need a token to talk to Cloudflare, or is it to talk to Terraform, or both?
I think as we have it today, because we used it before the Open Tofu and all of that. So I think we use Terraform Cloud, if I remember well, on that setup. So basically, we send the order to Terraform Cloud, and there is the token
specific for updating the configuration on Terraform, right? So although we don't have a good story for rotating existing secrets, if it's just if it's this secret that's scoped to just this workflow, probably rotating that, in the worst case, it's not going to be so bad. Rotating the secret on like the existing test machines or release machines, that's painful because you have to update every single machine. In theory, I think we could do through Ansible, but again, without proving that. But in terms of this workflow, presumably it will be wherever it's defined in the GitHub project. It will be a one place to update, and then presumably somewhere either in secrets or somewhere else that says, this is the token and it's configured here, and if it needs to be rotated, this is where you need to update and how to regenerate it. But I'm presuming, if that token is not being used in multiple places, if it's only just being used in one place, then it should be easier to rotate that in the worst case, should that happen.
Yeah, actually, let me share the screen 1 second, because just refreshing my mind a little bit, desktop 1. Yes, so you should see a GitHub issue. Yeah. You can see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, the thing is when I created this pull request for the Terraform part, the idea is like the GitHub Actions actually talk with Terraform Cloud asking for the change. So the token of Cloudflare is inside the Terraform Cloud, and we have a controlled list of people actually that can access to that, the same as other admin accounts. That's clear. So I think the big risk here is that we can expose Terraform Cloud token that is going to be exclusively used in this hub action potentially. So the rotation will be simple. I mean, at least not going to be rotated to all the machines. And the exposure is, I think, limited. While actually with this token, you can actually make changes on Cloudflare, but that's something that we can have control version on it and revert it and so on. So overall, it's not that tricky to restoring the infrastructure, and it's not that tricky to expose this token because it's limited to the communication for Terraform Cloud and not directly to Cloudflare, which is actually the most risky piece for us. So yeah, it's less exposure. Yeah, and the other case that we have is the mailing list. But yeah, I can find that pull request. But it basically is like when you land something on main, when you accept the pull request and you land it on main, basically it's going to use the token that we have for the mail service that I don't remember the name. And it's going to use that token to update the list, basically.
Yeah, Mailgun, you mean?
Mailgun, yeah, Mailgun.
Yeah.
Basically. So that also it's not a super critical, I think, because even if got exposed to whatever and the people change the redirection, it's going to affect only to those emails that we receive on that period even. So it's tricky, but not super critical, I think. So yeah, but yeah, maybe
like on the Terraform side, the whole idea is if something did happen, we should be able to restore more easily, right? Like Richard said, fairly easy to change to rotate the key, and then we should just be able to run like, okay, let's go back to our last known good and should be good. I guess
also
the impact is somebody could basically do a redirect, would basically because it controls the DNS, control where everybody goes for the main website. And
that's
revoking the Cloudflare token shouldn't be too hard as well.
Yeah.
So it comes down to trust in GitHub Actions. Does it make it if the repo was private, does that make it any better?
If the repo was private, it's going to be better. I think it's going to reduce a lot the risk from having more administrators on the main organization of GitHub. So we depend on the secondary organization. Then the thing there is like we control a lot the access. So in that sense, it's very limited the amount of people who can access, read it, make modifications, and so on. And we can obviously add more people on read level. Like for example, if someone that we want to be aware of what's going on Cloudflare, but not give them access, for example, the web team, we can include all of them in read level on that repository, and they can still, I think, do pull requests or not, depending on the level. Because also the idea there is like it's going to limit a lot the amount of forks, because you need to do like a private fork to do pull requests. I'm not very sure how that workflow actually works. But yeah.
I was more thinking something where like we still want like the record of what's there, probably public and probably even in the build repo, but we could come up with something where we have a private repo that on like a cron every 5 minutes says, hey, or maybe even on a webhook says like, was something pushed to the public repo? Yes. Clone it into our repo. Okay, actually do the integration to push it to Cloudflare, right? And then the secret could be in an action that's in the private repo versus in the public repo.
I'm just thinking about it. I'm not sure we actually want it to be public.
Okay.
For example, the jump host or that we use for releases, we want to keep it private. But if we make the DNS config public, it will be public.
Isn't the DNS okay? No, I guess the DNS isn't public today, is it? Okay.
Another option is using, that won't solve the issue Michael raised, but we could use the release Jenkins CI to run workflows deploying DNS changes instead of GitHub.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, then if we wanted to give more people access, like it mixes things so that then it's like,
more,
okay.
More people have access to the release CI than we have built-infra. I do trust them, but releases have access to the release CI, so it isn't just build that have access to it. It's small things, but yeah, there's not just.
Yeah, it's just self-managed
the
infrastructure, not GitHub infrastructure. But besides that, there's no difference.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to move to a private repository. I think that's a good agreement. So that's reduce the scope. I think having infrastructure as code will be really beneficial for us to make changes and revert changes, and we will be super confident. Even in the future, we might have some kind of a staging also to see the changes with all domain or different domain, for example. So that's kind of cool.
Definitely.
So yeah, I think the benefits are there. Maybe the challenge is how we do that. But for now, we can maybe do the terraforming part. So we have all there and we do the apply manually in the computer of one of the administrator of the infrastructure, which is kind of okay. I mean, the last step is something that we do manually, any of us, and we just merge the pull request when that's done, for example. So that way we can do it, and it's a first step, and we don't have to take a decision yet on rely on GitHub Action for the final application of the changes in the state. It's something that we do. That's it.
I don't know. I'd almost be. I don't know what other people think. Like if we had a private repo, would we willing just to do it in an action? Because like otherwise, it's like an individual person and their machine, and it's almost like it's more visible than it is. In theory, GitHub, a GitHub, and it's a private repo that not very many people can get at, and then nobody really knows the token except the person who put it in the first place.
Yep.
I guess anybody have concerns if we do it in a GitHub repo, like to use an action?
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Yeah, we still have both ways. I mean, let me share it again. I just passed the link. But yeah, if you see the issue here, let me pass you. If you see the image, basically there, well, I put the link to the pull request, not to the comment, sorry. Yeah, so if you see the comment in the picture, you have like two ways. You can go from localhost to the Terraform Cloud or from GitHub Action to the Terraform Cloud. So at the end, the human who is going to do the change is going to use that token specifically from Terraform Cloud, which is not the same as Cloudflare at all. So that also brings a lot of layers for us. So that's okay. And when we feel confident later on, we can go, like using a GitHub action. And when we feel more confident about it, we might make that public in the future or not at all. And that's okay. I think as soon as the, web team is aware of it, we are aware of it, and, we have some kind of code that we can all read and understand how it's Cloudflare, we reduce most of the challenges. Because actually, after the R2 migration, when it's finalized, I don't think there's going to be a lot of changes on Cloudflare. I mean, the amount of changes, even with this, was not that big. But it's true that it's a big bottleneck for many of us. But if we do it with code, it's going to simplify it a lot because it's easy to review. We have more eyes. And it's just a matter of some of us doing the deployment and be aware a couple of hours, days to see if something goes wrong. So that's something easier to control than today.
Yeah, and I think the history for me is the important part. Is like, we can see what was changed, and so like when something starts acting up, we can go there and say, oh, well, what's the history? Oh, well, we changed this yesterday, and it started acting like that. That in itself, I think, is going to be a really good.
Yeah. Also, it's going to match any mismatching automatically. If there is something on the UI that anyone does a change manually, to whatever vision, you can see the mismatching automatically on the pull request, which is going to be great. Like I'm updating this, but I see these other three things changes. So someone forget to do that on the pull request, whatever. So we can detect these kind of things also. So that's a great, or even having just a cron job saying like scan for it. see if something has changed. So we have an alert of someone manually has changed Cloudflare. Just be aware of it, which can be a hotfix in a moment, and that's okay, or not at all, and we are aware of. So yeah. I think the roadmap then, if we all agree, is going to be like create a private repository for this. So I will ask it on the admin repository. Start to migrate the pull request to that one, and for now we use the deployments manually, but we can use releases to control what we have on the DNS. So that's going to be, we get most of the benefits already with that. Okay, sounds good.
That sounds good.
Any additional topic that we want to discuss?
So I forgot to put the label on it. There, just so everyone knows, Equinix have sort of told us that they're planning to stop sponsoring non-ARM hardware on their cloud. So at the moment, we actually have this mess of like 3 separate Equinix Metal accounts. One of them is a works on ARM account, and that's okay. That's not going anywhere. So all the ARM testing that's going on there, that should be okay. But the other stuff that's spread over to other Equinix Metal accounts, we're going to need to find additional, alternate homes for those machines. Brian from MNX. So some of those machines are SmartOS machines, which is where MNX sort of get involved, because they sort of have roots in Joyent. The SmartOS stuff, was originally in Joyent and sort of went through to MNX. So they have a vested interest in keeping SmartOS and the Node CI, but they have offered to cover at least some of the machines. I'm trying to get some confirmation as to whether they'll extend to cover the all the machines. And I'm also trying to get the Linux IT team involved to, if we are starting new agreements with service providers. But yeah, just as an FYI, we have these machines at the moment that are probably at risk. So we're going to need to rehouse those. Hopefully the discussions with MNX go through, and we can move most of the machines there, if not all of them. But yeah, that's sort of ongoing in the background.
And I think just worth mentioning the challenges, some of those machines are pretty big, right?
Yes. So 2 of the 3 Jenkins workspace machines. So every job that runs on Jenkins runs on one of the Jenkins workspace machines before then running on the actual machines that do the testing. So we actually have 3 Jenkins workspace machines. 2 of them are in Equinix Metal, and one of those 2 machines hosts the temporary Git binary repository that the ARM fanned and the Windows fanned jobs run on. I have migrated that before, but that was within Equinix Metal. So yeah, it will almost be, when we get a replacement machine, it's almost like a clean break then, where you can't resume builds anymore. You'd have to restart new builds because the temporary Git repository. We could try and migrate it, but it still involves some sort of pause, because otherwise you run out of step with the Jenkins state. But there's that. But then the more, for me, the more concerning machine to lose would be the backup machine. So we actually have one machine which mirrors the DigitalOcean droplet, which is unencrypted. That I'm not too worried about, especially if we do complete the R2 migration. And then there's another machine called Backup, and Backup is not public facing. Backup is just a server we have with, I think it's 600 terabytes of disk space, but it's got a backup of every node release and also backups of like Jenkins config. So it's our ultimate disaster recovery location. So losing that would be a pretty big deal. But
I think the backups are rsyncs, right? So if we set up a new backup machine,
right, but you still need to find the new machine with that amount of storage.
Sure. The challenge is that it's a machine with lots of space.
And you would have to sit, well, I wouldn't say sit there, but the rsync is going to take a very long time.
Yep.
I'm sure we had to migrate that one before, because in one of the Equinix data center move.
Yes,
so
but that was handled. So hopefully, if assuming if the MNX offer pans out, I'm presuming Brian would do that migration for us. Given he has access to all that, but otherwise,
Right.
if he isn't involved in the migration, then yes, one of us will have to do an async to whatever the replacement is. But
I think
the main thing is those machines are big, so it's both either the additional disk space or the. I think it's more disk space than CPU RAM.
Yeah, I think it's getting a
also-
machine with the right space and then pointing, like, I think the other machines are synced to it. I remember the last migration.
I can't remember.
Anyway, it would be, yeah, we as
There
you said,
are,
we have to
you are right, it's asyncs, and I can't remember if it's pushed or pulled to the backup machine. It may be pushed. So like you say, could be the DigitalOcean droplets pushing out. Or alternatively, it could be the backup machines pulling. one of the two ways, but yeah, whatever. It's just an FYI that is a thing that we're going to need to do at some point. I don't have a firm deadline from Equinix as to when they plan to actually, turn the stuff off. I think at the moment they're amenable to letting us find the replacement and move.
Yeah.
But the intention has been communicated to us that it's not going to last much longer. And it's not just us. There are other projects that have been involved and informed that similar things, and they're having to find.
So I think one of the biggest challenge for us is going to be, and the major bottleneck, right, is going to be to find the hardware to actually do the things like the backup, especially, right? Because it has some special features like a huge disk.
Well, like I said, so at the moment that machine is included in the list of machines that Brian thinks MNX will be able to replace.
Okay.
So, fingers crossed that will pan it out. But in terms of risk, that added the server that is at risk. So hopefully hopefully the things will all pan out and we will have the replacement hardware to move to and can move the data. But otherwise, that is a big risky thing to. We don't currently have an alternate to that because we have one backup. We don't have multiple backups in multiple locations. And again, I've been trying to get the Linux Foundation involved in that because we want to formalize more of those relationships we have with the service providers. It will be good to have those on a more sort of formalized basis, and not some of the ad hoc agreements we have, even with MNX and Brian and the existing machines where they are currently in Equinix Metal, that had a very interesting genesis in terms of the relationship between Equinix, MNX, and the Node Foundation for that account. So yeah, again, clearing some of that stuff up would be great.
That's great. Yeah, I was thinking that there was an issue that I think Michael created regarding like how we can repurpose some of the DigitalOcean hardware after the R2 migration. So maybe we might cover some of the gaps there, especially with the big machine.
So my concern, well, not concern. The thing about the big machines are they're non-standard, which means that they are likely to cost more than if you just create a normal whatever the default thing and especially for DigitalOcean, we are on a credit system, which I think we are using pretty much. We're close to capacity in terms of DigitalOcean credits. I believe. I mean, I don't know. I don't actually see the billing. So those machines are big enough that they would be noticeable, if you were to itemize the things by cost. So even if DigitalOcean is, a thing that we move to, that would need to be agreed between, I guess, us and sort of FYI to the foundation, because the foundation sort of negotiates with DigitalOcean for the amount of credits we have. That's all. I mean, it's not that it's impossible to go there, but we need to be quite conscious that this is not just another test machine. This is quite a large machine. So there's a difference between, let's sunset an Ubuntu 16 machine and replace it with something else, because it will be a much larger machine than one of those. So that's the only thing there.
Do you think the foundation could be able to talk again with Scaleway? So to see if they want to help us, because we still have their logo on the build page without any server anymore.
So we may need to double check with Rod who the contacts with Scaleway, or who he thinks the contacts with Scaleway are, because I don't think anyone on this call has been involved with Scaleway previously.
I seem to remember they sent us an email.
So Yagiz did reach out to Scaleway. So there was a thing last year with them, but that didn't actually result in any new things there. It was just Scaleway saying that there is an account that Node already has.
Right. I think there was somebody who said like, hey, I seem to remember them kind of saying like, hey, let us know, right? So I think if we could find that, we could probably figure out who to talk to.
In answer to that question, yeah, I would be very much in favor of the Linux Foundation would be willing to talk to any of our providers. I guess the question is what would we hope to host there? And then I would then like to go through the Linux Foundation and see if they're willing to have that relationship with Scaleway. I'm not opposed to that if all parties are willing.
So like I found the email.
I think the main question is what would we be asking for from Scaleway? Because I think in the past,
well, I don't know what they offer.
Yeah, in the past I think it was like ARM hardware, but it turned out that I think the builds were less stable on those. But that was like quite old ARM hardware. So yeah,
maybe we could host similar like small test machines like we do on DigitalOcean, Rackspace. Thinking about that because, for example, Rackspace has a very outdated version of Fedora, so it's not possible to upgrade there. There's also Debian. When I tried to upgrade, I think it was to the latest version of Debian on IBM Cloud, it wasn't available.
Yeah, that's tricky. Yeah, I was thinking for a while that maybe it's going to be easier for us to do upgrades if we start to move some of these pieces to Docker containers, so we can, have like a version on the main host, and then we can start to, just modifying some Docker files to get different versions. That may help, or it's maybe not at all.
Yeah, but I'm not sure we're really testing it correctly if we do it in Docker containers.
Yeah,
it will still run on the kernel of the host.
Yeah, we can have some tricky flags, like run it on privilege mode and things like that. So we can,
It's not that. It's things like the kernel version. So, for example, the IOU ring stuff with libuv, that is affected by kernel version. So if we test it on Docker containers, you may not get the same results as if you were testing on a similar install of the same operating system, but on bare metal. You'd be on a different, instead of being the kernel of that version of, say, Ubuntu, you'd be the kernel version of the host OS. So yeah, there are some nuances there. For a lot of cases, a Docker container is good enough. And we are testing, I think all the Alpine testing is in containers. So, we do that for some of the things. But there are limitations in terms of.
All right. And in my experience, it's more difficult to set up with Ansible.
Yeah. Well, there are different scripts, so yes.
The other thing is, like, I know in some of the discussions with the Linux Foundation, I get the sense they prefer a smaller number of providers versus a bunch of them, right? But so I think from the email it says a €50 monthly amount. It did say it was about to expire as well, but like I don't know how far that would go in terms of machines.
Doesn't sound like a lot, does it?
No.
So I don't know. Again, I think it would almost be we would have to try and estimate what we would plan to use, and then that begs the other question: well, what are they offering in terms of what we might host there? So yeah, if someone wants to have a look at that and make a proposal, we could take that to the foundation. But yeah, I know for us, we've tried to spread the risk to have, not all of one thing on one service provider where possible, but I think in a few cases that it hasn't been possible. I mean, we've done that to try and make the infrastructure resilient. But yeah, I think the Linux Foundation would prefer us to be on less providers. It's a trade-off.
It may be that, like, Michael, if we put together a list of like, here's the things we're trying to find a home for, and then we went to the Linux Foundation and said, like, you were looking at helping. Now's the time. Like, we're going to try and find some new providers. Can you handle this for us, right?
I can try.
Yeah, I mean, if you like, because you could list, I don't know, even if it's just like you're saying we can't find the Debian versions we need with the existing providers. Like,
maybe there the solution is to talk with the providers. But,
yeah.
Yeah, it comes down to, like, do we want to, like, going forward, if the Linux Foundation is going to manage this, we would have to deal with them anyway, right? Because, like, if they're going to be like, well, we prefer if we're like, their stance seems to be like, if we're managing them, we're managing them, right? You can't have it. You can't have it both ways. So it's kind of like, maybe it's worth starting like with our current issues and see if they can resolve them for us. And if they can't, well, then that's a piece of information right there. And if they do, well, then good, maybe it's easier, right?
Yeah, well, the current issue is that we have many outdated OSs in CI, but I'm not sure what the best solution is for that.
Yeah.
Is it that we want to replace those and we can't find the new ones, or?
Yeah, so for example, for Debian, we have a few old versions that are out of support, and we need to replace them with a supported version of Debian. Same with Fedora, same with Ubuntu.
Yeah. So if we bring a new provider that can give us new machines, then that will fix partially the problem, because we can start to include new machines and then deprecate the old ones.
Well,
and then we can.
The issue there is if the provider doesn't actually provide the operating system we're trying to upgrade to, then it doesn't actually solve the machine. So there's getting the machines, but then there's actually getting the images onto the machines. So
I see.
Yeah, when you provision a machine in a provider, you usually pick an image to deploy onto that machine. So if the provider isn't providing that particular OS, then you're going to have to you end up, however, having to provide your own image to put onto the machines, which is what we had to do for RHEL on. It was DigitalOcean. I think on DigitalOcean I uploaded the there's an image for RHEL to deploy onto was it Cloud Init? But yeah, I mean, again, that's not free. So if you upload an image into one of these providers, they do charge a small amount of storage fee per month to host that image.
Yeah, and you need to build that image or to find someone who did it.
Yeah. I mean, for RHEL, I just reasonable. The provenance of that's reasonably well known, but for other things, we have to look and see if there's an official image that can be uploaded. Because otherwise,
it's interesting that, like, there wouldn't be a cloud, like, that the cloud providers wouldn't provide like a new Debian.
Well, so for example, IBM Cloud, Michael Zasso had a look. They have Debian 11. They just don't, but they don't have Debian 12. So we could put more Debian 11 in, but yeah, we were looking at putting both 11 and 12 into the CI, and the sort of initial solutions were to take like Debian 8 and make that. I can't remember what the proposal was. It was like take one version of Debian and make it this version, and take this other version of Debian and make it this other version. But then you run into, oh, this machine is on IBM Cloud, and oh, okay, we can't go to Debian 12 on IBM Cloud easily. You know, we can go to Debian 11 because there's an image available for that. At the time that was looked, there wasn't a Debian 12 image. I don't know what IBM's policy is to how often they get images onto, you know, updated images in there, or whether it's reliant on other people putting images in there. But yeah, it's, I mean, those cloud providers, I guess, you know, they have their own policies as to what they offer. I mean, I think FreeBSD, for example, DigitalOcean used to offer that, but no, don't do that anymore. So if we wanted
to, I'm more like, does it mean something about usage? Right, like if nobody provides a particular one, then it's like I'm just, you know, it's like,
well, I mean,
it's not that nobody provides it.
Okay.
But if we wanted to
DigitalOcean provides everything. We need except FreeBSD now, but for everything else, they have the most recent versions available. The problem is with the other providers.
Right.
Yep.
So yeah, it comes back to the, you know, spreading risk. You know, we could put our eggs into the DigitalOcean basket, which I don't know, maybe if we, you know, talk to the Linux Foundation, maybe that's the way I want us to go ultimately, in terms of having less providers for them to deal with. Does mean that if there's an outage there, well, that's that whole section of things. But you know, we aren't immune from outages in the CI. I think for a lot of cases we are resilient to short outages that are contained, but large outages.
I still think we should, as our starting point, say we want, for any particular thing, we want 2 providers. Like that's our
that's what we've tried to do. So
yeah. So like in this specific case, if we have a list that says we can't find a second provider for blah blah and blah, like the assertion is they have some relationships with providers. Let's say, can you help us find our second provider for blah blah and blah? It seems like, you know, if there's that solid ask, even if it's just for like a couple machines for each of them, it's not necessarily like that would be maybe a decent way to start.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, that list would be a key thing. Yeah. Also, if we want to bring new providers, we can just check out, you know, with that list if they can provide something on that can help us.
So Michael, maybe if you have that, I don't know if you've got the list of like, hey, here are the ones you haven't been able to find. We could just use that as a, like, hey, we're looking to figure out how to get these images. Can you help us with this?
Okay, so I'll do that. I will make a list of all the providers we have and what they offer and what they don't offer. So we have an overview.
That's handy too. But like in this case, it would also be then like, here are the ones that we would like to have that we don't, like you're trying to get, say, Debian 12.
Yeah, exactly. So what I want to do is like highlight that only DigitalOcean provides the most recent OSs.
Yep. Okay.
And yeah, we need to find someone
else.
And
then that'll let you build that list of here's the 4 things that we'd really like to have. Can you, and we can make that the ask.
Okay.
Sounds great. Oh, I'm late.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yep. We'll have to finish. Okay.
Yep. Thanks. I'm going to have to, because the next meeting is the next 10 one, which
I will join in a minute. Okay. Thank you, Megan.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.